All right. So my name is Adam, and I'm sitting here with my mom Julie, and we're going to talk about opinions and experiences with gender roles in the workplace, and touching a little bit on social roles as well as some opinions on raising children. So let's just jump right into it. So first one, just in your own words, how would you define gender roles?
I think gender roles are a couple of different things. First of all, I guess we have conscious gender roles and unconscious gender roles because I find myself at work sometimes having to fight against unconscious gender roles. And for example, it's automatic when I want the garbage taken out that I will ask a male to take the garbage out as if that's a male gender role. Although it doesn't seem to be a gender role as to who I ask to do the dishes. So I think there's conscious and unconscious gender roles about how we ask people to do work.
So which one do you think plays a bigger part in like our daily lives? Do you think it's the conscious part or the unconscious part?
I think it's the unconscious part.
The unconscious part.
Mhm.
So the fact that whenever anything comes to like lifting or like moving heavy things, you'll automatically just kind of select a guy to do it. Meanwhile, if it's kind of like lighter work or maybe more social work, you might ask a woman, or does it matter at that point?
I I might ask a woman to do it, but I think it's less obvious um, with social. I think I would ask a type of person to do it rather than
Okay, so
a
like
specific sex of person.
So for like physical activities, you would probably prefer men, and then when it comes to like other, what's an activity that you would actually think that you would slant towards picking women for?
So let's just say there's an upset person in the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more likely to send a woman to deal with the upset person because women tend to be more verbal, more empathetic, more listening, less threatening. So I would tend to send a woman out in those instances.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think that these have any like play in how people and like what people choose to do with their lives?
I think that's a little antiquated.
A little
Right.
antiquated?
Right, because I think more occupations are open to both genders, both sexes, or all genders and all sexes now, because we have many genders and many sexes that we work with on a daily basis. But for example, there still are biases. For example, how often do you see a male nurse, and how much stigma is there to being a male nurse, which is a typically female role?
Actually, that's a great little leeway into one of the questions that I had, where you do typically see some professions kind of drift entirely one way or the other. Like, for example, on the male side of things, you see things like science, mathematics, more physical jobs like garbage collectors or construction. Those tend to be all male. Meanwhile, you see things like childcare, social workers, teachers. Those are like primarily dominated by women.
I think there's a lot of blending there now, though. I think there's a lot of blending. Maybe not for garbage. I mean, because every time I see the garbage guy come by, it tends to be a male.
Oh, definitely.
But for teachers and for some of the physical professions, I tend to see more women truck drivers, which
really?
I would consider to be more of a male role. But it's not physically demanding. So certainly a woman can drive a truck as well as a man can. And I think now that we have a lot more same-sex couples and same-sex relationships, it's more about personalities than it is about gender specifically.
So you think that now when it comes to why people pick jobs, it's more about who they are and what they like,
I think so.
rather than it is like how they were raised or whatever gender they may be.
I think so. And now with a lot of STEM programs, you do see a lot more women going into the math and sciences. Now, I don't know how much stigma they get while they're there, and I don't know how much stigma is attached, again, to being a female doctor as being opposed to being a male nurse. But I think that it's a lot more now about personalities and how that person is compared to specific sexuals. And I think if I just use my family in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's me and there's my 3 sons and my husband, right? So if I did all the female specific roles around here, I'd be working all the time and you guys would be sitting on the couch watching TV, watching sports, right? So how many sports watchers do we have in our house?
Currently, I think it's only dad.
Yeah, it's only dad, right?
Yep.
And so you guys equally clean bathrooms, which, cleaning house is what, a female specific role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you take out the trash, right? And you assist in cooking, and you assist in cleaning the kitchen, and you assist in doing shopping. So you guys probably have less specific gender roles in our household because it's all males. Now, if I'd had a daughter, I don't know how that would have played out.
That would actually be kind of interesting. Although, I guess your sister would be the exact. Would that be kind of the same way, or?
Yeah, it would be.
She had all girls.
Yeah, she had all girls. So if there's trash to be taken out, there's only a girl to do it, right?
Huh, that's actually really interesting. How just having all of like one sex for like sons, or like having all sons or all daughters can kind of like mix it because there is no like it can blur it because there's no actual like divide there. So in terms of you said that it's more on personality, right?
Right.
But we still end up with some of these jobs where it's like very heavily slanted. So do you think there's like some personality traits that are probably more common to one sex or the other?
Well, shoot.
Because if I pulled up some numbers, I think teachers in recent years, there's been more men in them, but it's still 75% women.
And I think if you went into lower grades with younger children, the percentage would be
even
higher.
Yeah.
And then if you went into upper grades in
high
school,
or in universities and such, it would probably be more men.
Right.
No, that's actually good. All right. So another one that I'm going to touch on real quick, we're going to talk about social behaviors that are seen as I guess the right word is appropriate for like each sex. So I'll just start with women. So in your experience, would you say there's some social behaviors which are only seen as appropriate if it's a woman?
So for example, maybe crying.
Yeah, I think that's a big one.
Would be a social behavior. I think maybe women have a hissy fit kind of thing. Men tend to be more stoic and angry and crossed arms, and
like they'll just kind of buckle down, deal with it, and get angry about it later instead of throwing a fit about it.
Well, men tend to, and I have a staff of 28, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at it before we came here, so I have 28. So I have 16 females and 12 males.
That's more evenly split than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because some of the things that you would think of that would be typically female, like gossiping, right?
Oh, okay.
I have found that although gossiping is associated with women and female groups,
mm-hmm.
men gossip just as much or more than females every day. Every day. Oh, did you see what he did? Did you see what she did? I mean, guys do it. It's in a different way, but they do.
Same behavior, but it has like a different spin, or they talk about different subjects, maybe?
Well, I think different things bother different people, right? So, well, she didn't come over and help out, but men gossip and complain just as much as women, although you think complaining and gossiping is more associated with being a feminine trait.
So perhaps some of the gender roles and like the associations aren't exactly, well, I mean, maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe there's some truth, but it's not a rule by any means.
Well, if you look at a stereotype, what is a stereotype?
Oh, it's like a little nugget of truth blown out of proportion, right?
Exactly. So gossipy females, weepy females. I mean, I have seen men may not weep, oh, but they pout, right? And that would be another thing that would be associated with women is the lip hanging out and pouting and being upset and being sullen about something. Men do it too. It's just it looks a little bit different.
It looks a little bit different. Maybe it's not as obvious.
It's pretty obvious.
It's pretty obvious?
It's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Yeah. Men kind of go pre-verbal and shut down when they're cranky or
when they're in a bad
pissy.
mood, they just don't talk.
Yeah.
What is I've noticed that I do that at work. Whenever I'm in a bad mood or I'm not feeling good, I just don't talk.
Right.
Like I'll just put myself where I don't have to talk to anybody, and I'll just do that until I feel better.
Exactly. Or you go in the back and you complain to your friend and you make fun of the person that you're mad of, and then you feel better and you kind of vent it out and then you come out. I think men and women vent differently, right? So when something happens that makes two people equally upset,
Mm-hmm.
women will immediately show the emotions and men will go in the back and act out the emotions, right? So they'll go in the back and complain to their friends rather than show that they have hurt feelings. It's all the same feeling and it comes out. It just comes out in a different way.
No, I actually really like that.
I see male staff get angry and go in the back and punch a wall instead of sitting there crying and being upset in front of other people.
Instead of showing that they're upset, they go out and do something because they're upset.
Yes.
So it's like these slight differences.
Right.
It's like it's like different sides of a coin, really.
Right. And I know that if I have a male staff that is angry about something, I can give him something physical to do to allow him to kind of vent that emotion. And if that's just running the garbage out, then that allows him to run the garbage out. And when they come back in, they've had a breath of fresh air and
they've had a second to get away and they can just go like, okay,
exactly.
I did something. I didn't have to think about it. Like, we're okay.
Okay, I'm good now.
Yeah. Oh, what is it? I had another question where it was going to be the same thing but mine, but we kind of just like hit both of those at the same time, which is amazing. All right. And so, oh, sorry about the dogs. Anyway, so the next one that I've got for you is going to be, actually, maybe we kind of hit that one too, but I'll still mention it because maybe the wording has something different. So it's about what do you think the biggest differences are in between social behaviors of men and women? And I think we just addressed that. It's like
I think men are more physical, and women are more emotional. But when you, like you said, when you get a same-sex couple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since they're both men, one tends to take on them. They tend to take on different roles, right? Or two women. Have you ever heard of, you see a female couple, right? Mm-hmm. And one will be more manly or butch, and the other one will be more feminine. The same with
we have a saying for that. It's like who wears the pants in the relationship. I think it was
exactly right. But who's the more aggressive, assertive, outspoken? That tends to be more of the male role.
And I mean, that's always going to happen when you get two people together because people are all different.
Right.
They're just going to have their own preferred
one's
ways.
Going to have to take a more aggressive role. One's going to have to take a back seat. If you look at your dad and I,
mm-hmm.
right, even though your dad is obviously the male, who's the one that's more likely to speak out and step forward and do what needs to be done?
That would be you.
Exactly.
What is it? My dad would prefer to just sit back and go like, I don't care. I don't want to be a part of it.
Yes, but if there's something he feels strongly about.
Oh, no, I've seen him get angry. Exactly. It's rare, which is why it surprises you whenever it happens. But when it does, you're like, okay.
If you feel that strongly enough,
we're going to change it.
You get it, yeah.
All right. And do you think any of those social behaviors affect what jobs people would prefer to work?
I would think so.
I think so, yeah. Right. Like I mentioned earlier, how construction and garbage are primarily male, and those are like heavily physical. And then we also have like the social worker and the teachers, which are more.
Well, what if you look at personality types instead of sexual differentiation? You look at personality types. So people that are more physical are going to want to go out and do. People that are maybe more physical and less verbal are going to want to go out to do those jobs that are more physical and less verbal, right? People that are more nurturing are going to want to do the nurturing job, the nurse, the teacher, Can't think of one off the top of my head, but those more social people, social worker, like you said,
Oh yeah.
are going to want to do those kind of jobs because they have those skills.
So in your opinion, it would probably be more personality-wise
I would think so
than
now.
sex.
Yeah, I would think so now. But certainly, I mean, we can't deny that there's going to be a physical aspect to every job. So, I mean, why aren't there too many female quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Because there's a definite physical
there's a definite physical difference.
requirement, right? There's a physical, you can't deny that physically and biologically there's differences between men and women, although we like to blur them, but there are. I mean, simply matter of fact, men tend to be stronger than women, tend to be taller than women, tend to be more physically.
I mean, they can build up muscle easier and faster.
Well, they do. That's biologically, right? Biologically, not that women can't, but it takes a lot.
It takes
work.
more effort,
right?
Which is, I think, that's the whole. But that's probably the entire reason we have separate like sports leagues and everything.
Sure, I'm not sure I agree with it all the time, but when you look at I mean, I think at a certain age, kids all play the same sports, right? Because they're all at one point they're all kind of equal, right? And then they start hitting teenage years, and men put on bulk, and I mean, when you look at the middle-aged kids, girls are actually taller and more developed than boys are, but they catch up, right?
Yeah, what is it? I think male development is always just like that little bit slower. But they do eventually like catch up.
No, then they do a kickstart. They hit adolescence.
They hit a certain point and just boom.
They grow a foot and they've got muscles and facial hair and all kinds of,
All right, that actually is a nice little bridge into the little section around kids. So since obviously you have children, do you believe that boys and girls, when they're growing up, should be treated any differently?
No.
No, not at all?
No. I don't think so. I mean, I'll use you as an example. I'm going to pick on you, right?
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so you're what, 4 years older than your middle brother? 3 years?
3.5? I don't think it's quite 4.
Almost 4.
Yeah.
So when I was pregnant with Noah, you were very fascinated with the fact that mom was having a baby. And even though you'd never had, dolls, you treated this little stuffed animal like it was your baby, and you wrapped it up like a baby. And your grandfather said, "Oh my God, you're giving him dolls. He's playing with dolls." It's like, no, he's not playing with dolls. He's experimenting with what it is to be a parent. He's excited. He's trying to rationalize in his head what's going on in his life, right? So
it's more situation. It's probably more situation based.
So. I think that's the way kids deal with things. They work them out.
Like, for example, if I was an only child, I would have never had that.
Maybe.
I probably wouldn't have had that experience. Maybe not as early.
Maybe, and maybe not. Maybe you would have, maybe you would have had a stuffed animal that you treated like a baby. But I think you were more trying to rationalize to yourself what was happening in your life.
All right. And so the next one coming right after that is do you think gender roles have any value for kids when they're growing up?
Okay, I'm going to use another example with you.
Okay, got it.
All right. So I think kids see gender about the same way they see color. Right?
Oh, they see color?
I'm going to use an example.
All right, go for it.
Sorry. So when you were in kindergarten, you came out one time. I'm sitting outside the kindergarten. I'm waiting for you to come out, and you come out yelling, "My mom, that black kid hit me. That black kid hit me." And horrified, I looked at the other mother saying, "I didn't raise a racist. I swear to God, I didn't raise a racist." And I said, "Well, which is the kid that hit you, honey?" And you pointed to the little boy in the black shirt, right? You didn't see color. You weren't being a racist. You were trying to identify that person. Right?
I just took it literally.
Right. And so kids don't see gender. Kids see gender roles, maybe, because kids are going to go to the nurturing person when they need nurturing. They're going to go to the physical person when they want to be physical. Kids need both to see both sides of it. Right. So like I said, with you 3 boys, you learned how to cook because I wasn't going to do it every night. right? So you had to take on more of a feminine role. But also, when I want holes dug in the backyard, you're out there digging holes too, right? So I don't think kids see gender specific roles. Kids are maybe taught gender specific roles and they see it on TV or they whatever, or maybe their parents teach them. But I don't think kids see gender specific roles just the
They
way
just kind of go to what they need
exactly and
or what they want.
exactly just the same way kids aren't taught. Kids don't grow up racist. Kids are taught racism, right? Kids don't grow up gender specific. Kids are taught. They might have personality traits that would move them one way or the other, but kids are not intrinsically born into a social role. They learn that.
What is it? You could also probably say the same for like class and everything. It's like you're taught how to act based on like what you have.
You copy those people around you. So if you were raised in a household where there were very specific gender roles, and I was a very specific female gender role mother figure, right? Then I would have never had you cook or clean. I would have done all of it, right? And you would have taken out the trash, and you would have done the yard work, and you would have mowed the lawn. I'm sure there are families that are raised that way.
Oh, without a doubt.
Right. But for us, it was, this needs to be done. There's nothing girly or boy-y about.
It's like, this needs to be done. Everyone's going to pitch in because doing it alone sucks.
Yeah, well, quite frankly, I'm not going to clean up after you little buggers all the time. So that's
exactly
going to happen. Yeah.
We learned that very quickly. So would you say that it's not that gender roles are valuable or not? It's just they're just kind of there.
Well, I mean, you can't deny that there are gender roles, and I'm not going to say that it's not valuable to be aware of them, because if you start, like I said, you start doing unconscious gender roles, right? So if you're not conscious of it, then it'll become unconscious. So I have to be aware myself that, hey, gosh, Jim took out the trash yesterday and the day before and the day before. It might be Mary's turn to take out the trash because that's just fair. Why should he have to take out the trash every day because he's a guy? That's not fair.
Oh, God, I remember coming home and complaining to you about having to take out 3 trash loads in one day. And I'm like, that's heavy. I don't want to do that every time.
Yeah, it's not fair. Now, I might be more specific because I do have one female that works for me who's a little bitty teeny thing. Right. And you know that 40-gallon trash can, when it's full, weighs a couple 100 pounds, and she's not physically capable of doing that. So I might send her back to do dishes or to clean the bathrooms and send somebody who's bigger up to do a trash run, because it just doesn't make any sense to send somebody who's a little bitty tiny. She can carry out the cardboard,
she can like help her do other things. It's like, but she can't take the entire thing because that's
because she physically
really heavy.
She physically can't do it.
All right, that's actually really good. Awesome. So the next one I've got is about. So it's going to be about the workplace, and it's about. I guess we can just say leadership roles. It specifically says boss, but leadership role is pretty much the same thing. So I know you've had bosses that are both either you've had
male and female
yeah
bosses.
Male and female. And have you noticed any? Would you say there were any differences between them that you would attribute to gender, or would you say it's probably more personality?
I would have to say it's more personality, because I have a female boss who's not very verbal, right? And I've had male bosses that were very verbal, and that's kind of cross stereotype, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's mixing it up right there.
Yeah, so men tend to be less verbal, and women tend to be more. My female boss right now is less verbal. I mean, she comes in and she physically does things, but when you talk to her, she takes a while to kind of
like process it and then think it through and get back to you.
Yeah. If I specifically tell her what I need, she's right there. Specifically, she'll tell me what I need to do. Right. But she's less confrontive I guess, and she's just less verbal. And
she just kind of comes in, does what she thinks needs to be done, and like shows you instead of just telling you.
Exactly. And if you look at my parents, because now that they live with us, right?
Yep.
I used to beg my mom, would you please just punish me and stop talking to me? Because my mother will talk forever. and my dad is the less verbal kind of guy. They're very, very typically stereotypical, right?
Oh, very.
Right. But now I think people are not so much, like I said, it's a personality thing. I don't see it as a gender role thing. And I'm not saying that gender roles are not important, but it just seems that the line is blurred now.
So since you brought it up about your parents, since they were born
in the 40s.
In the 40s?
Mm-hmm.
I would guess since you said they were more stereotypical, that it was, would you say that it's just kind of like, it's kind of blurred as we've like, it's been like blurring as we've gone? Or
well, sure. I mean, since we're more of a technologically advanced society now, right? So the man is not out digging in the field and feeding the animals and farming, right? Those are very physically demanding, stereotypical jobs, and the man did it, so the woman stayed home and cooked and cleaned and took care of the kids, right?
Yeah, they split.
So I mean, it doesn't take any physical requirements to run a computer. It doesn't take any physical requirements
to drive a tractor,
or to drive an automobile. There might be perceived stereotypes that do that kind of job, but it's not as rigid as it used to be.
So it'd probably be, it's like the advent of technology has made it so that more people can do more jobs, and therefore it's less required that one specific kind of person does that job.
Sure. If you're hooking up your oxen to pull your plow, I mean, that requires a certain amount of physical ability to be able to do it. They're big animals. You got to muscle them around. You have to be stronger than they are, right? But if you're doing the same job with a tractor, there's no reason why a woman can't drive a tractor. There's no physical requirement to driving a tractor.
Oh, not at all.
Right.
At that point, it's less physical and it's more just skill.
Sure.
And anyone can develop the skill.
Sure.
Physical is a little harder, probably.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I'm going to go back to the boss thing real quick because I missed the last part of it. So you said that it's probably more personality than anything, and
I think so.
And that's what accounts for the differences between the people, right?
I think so.
And so I guess the last one, and I guess obviously I think I already know what your answer is going to be, but the last one is just, do you have a preference?
Do I have a preference in what?
Do you have a preference between male bosses or female bosses, just in general?
No, I have a preference towards personalities.
Yes,
I definitely have a preference towards personalities. I don't like to be micromanaged.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I like to be told what to do and to be left alone to do it. And then I'll come back and tell you what I've done. And then if you have an issue about what I've done, you can tell me and I'll go back and fix it. Right? So to me, it's more about personalities.
Oh, awesome. All right. And so now, I'm gonna ask you a quick question, because the next question I have is about a term. Are you familiar with the term? It's called a glass ceiling.
Sure.
So I'm just going to define it before we get into anything. It's typically referred to as the point at which women will no longer be promoted in a company. Do you believe that's a thing?
I hope not, but I'm afraid so. But I think a lot of it, I think some of it is biological. Because let's be honest. If I'm going to hire somebody in a management position, and I want them to be in that management position for 10 years, if I hire a 24-year-old female, what's likely to happen to that 24-year-old female in the next 10 years?
Oh, at some point she's going to want to start a family.
Perhaps. right? And every time she has a family, she's going to be out for 6 months, and then she's going to have kids, and the kids are going to get sick. And typically, the mom is the one who stays home with the sick kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's conscious or unconscious, right?
But that's more biological than anything.
Sure, but a man who's going to, but if you're hiring somebody in a position, a 10-year position, you want them to be there. You don't want them to every 2 years take a 6-month break. And then you have to figure out what to do when they're not there. I also think that, as far as the glass ceiling thing, and I see that in my job and in my peers, that women tend to stay longer in low-paying jobs. I don't know why. Maybe men feel like they're not being fulfilled. If women tend, gosh, this sounds really corny, but women tend to be fulfilled by the job itself, where men need advancement and
or progress,
or they feel like they're not manly enough if they're not being promoted up.
Do you think it has something to do with maybe men are more ambitious?
No, I think women, I've met some really ambitious women. I don't think so, but I think that men and women get fulfilled by different things, right? I think that's why women tend to be teachers more, right? Because it's a nurturing kind of job. It's a lower paid job, right? But you tend to be very fulfilled.
Yeah, it's a very rewarding job.
Exactly, right? So probably why men, have more heart attacks and strokes and everything else, because they tend to be stressed out.
They tend to push themselves.
Right, if they're not being promoted. Women and men, I think, get their satisfaction from different things, right? I have never wanted to be promoted, right? I enjoy the job that I'm doing very much. And I don't want my boss's job because it's much less of the stuff that I like to do and a whole bunch more stuff that I don't like to do, right? So I love working with my staff and I love working with my community and my customers. I don't like the firing part. I don't like the holding, of course I hold people accountable, but I don't like to go in and clean up other people's messes. And I don't like to be the one who walks in and says, okay, so now if you don't do this, you're going to be fired. That's not the part. I don't want to hear complaints. I hear enough complaints, but I don't want to hear complaints from 15 other different people. It's bad enough that I hear the complaints that I have to deal with, right? So that job would not be fulfilling for me. I don't want it.
It sounds like more work than it's worth.
It's a different kind of work. It's not the kind of work that I like, right? I like this work. I'm fulfilled in my job, okay? It's not worth it to me to make an extra $50,000 a year doing something I don't like. That would stress me out, right? That's not what I want to do. But maybe men feel driven to get that higher job because it's the money that they feel is the fulfilling part, not actually the job themselves. So they'll be driven.
It's more where they've gotten themselves than it is what they're doing.
Right. And they'll be driven to take a role that they don't like because they feel like they've got to do that to be successful rather than the job itself actually being fulfilling. I feel like I get, of course, if you were to offer me more money, I would take it. But I feel like I get very well paid for what I do most days.
Most days.
Some days not so much, but most days I feel like I get paid pretty well for what I do, and it wouldn't be worth it to me. It wouldn't be worth it to me to move to another location that would be a higher paying location because I've spent 12 years in one spot establishing relationships with my community and my customers. Why would I want to reinvent that somewhere else just for another $5,000 a year? It's not worth it to me.
You've got plenty of friends where you are right now who actively like you and go there because you work there.
Don't act so shocked.
I'm not. I'm not. I've seen how you interact with people. You get along very well with people.
Right, but I find the job that I do fulfilling in itself. It's not worth it to me to take on more stress for more money. It's just not worth it.
So maybe that would So let me just try and sum that up. So it's part biological in the fact. So the glass ceiling might be part biological in the fact that women will want to like stop and have children, and that perhaps if you're hiring someone for that position, you just don't want to have to deal with someone not being there.
Right. And maybe that person has spent less time on the job because they've taken time off to do other things, right?
Yes. And then the other part is because, like you said, maybe women are just more, they focus on more the work than like going to that next like milestone.
Right. And that's just me. I don't know if that's all women, but I think in general, when you look at women that, you know, that could be in higher paying jobs, but are actually very satisfied where they are. So, for example, you look at a school, right? And if 70% of the teachers are female, I'll bet more than 50% of the time the principal is a male.
Actually, I would have to take a look at that. That's actually interesting.
Right? But that's a higher stress job with not as much of the satisfaction that you would get from
because a principal is by no means the same job as a teacher.
Right, but most principals were teachers at one point and moved forward. They went into administration, right? They
took the higher paying job. They took the higher.
They move up.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm just looking at the 3 schools that I know of that you kids went to, and female staff.
Yeah, I think all of my principals were male.
No, Willett female.
Oh, Willett was female?
Willett was female the whole time.
That is an elementary school, though.
Right.
So maybe that's a little different, because I think the middle school and
but your middle school and your high school were both male principals.
And if I were to take a look at my university, I would bet that the dean it might be a male. Maybe. I'd have to look. That's entirely a guess. Okay, so the last one I actually had for you, I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but I'm just gonna see if you have any additional thoughts on it. It's about the differences between men and women in how they take off time from work.
How they take off time for work.
Like how much or for what reasons?
I haven't noticed any difference. I mean, as far as giving my staff vacation, I haven't noticed any difference in what they want time off for. I mean, obviously, women take time off to have children.
Oh, obviously.
Right? But right now, men equally take as much time off because under the law, they can take their Family Leave Act. So men are taking time off to spend with their children.
So you've actually given men like time off for like, I guess it'd be paternity at that point.
Right.
I actually wasn't aware that
it's called FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, or something like that. So yeah, so I've had a female take her 8 weeks off to have her baby, and then I've had a male supervisor whose wife took off 8 weeks to have the baby, and then he took off the next 8 weeks to stay home with the baby while she went back to work. Right. So I think equally men take time off for that. I think equally now with my staff that have children, it could be either one that stays home. I think, with your dad and I, it was more likely that your dad would stay home with you since I've had this job, because since I'm shift work, it's harder for me to take off, because if you don't have 8 people there to do the job, it's harder. And your dad being, can kind of work at home, and, nobody's going to die if the computer doesn't get fixed one day. Right.
Yeah. He has a little bit more flexibility.
Exactly.
Like he can work from home on like servers and stuff. Meanwhile, if you're not in there making drinks and dealing with people, no one else is.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So I think that just about covers everything that I had here. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you wanted to go back for?
No. I mean, I just think with gender, I'm not going to deny that there's some biological aspect to it. Men, like I said, women can't be quarterbacks or linebackers. I mean, they're physically not capable. Now, could a woman be a soccer kicker? Of course, right?
Oh,
so I just want to be very careful, especially, in the job that we work, that you are very aware of whatever your unconscious bias is, or how you were raised, so that you don't impose your bias.
You don't
somebody else.
impose your rules on people who might play by something entirely different.
And I don't want to interpret somebody else's bias in terms of my own experience, right?
So you just kind of want to take it. You want to take them, what they do and what they say, at face value.
Exactly. I don't want to interpret another culture that may have more specific bias than I do, and I don't want to look at their bias through my perspective, right? I don't want to assume that they're doing something because of how I would do it.
All right. Well, that's actually great. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate it.
I don't know if it was any good, but whatever.